Hi there, and welcome to this episode of the Everyday Millionaire Mindset Matters podcast, where I'm joined by my wife, Olympic mental performance coach, Steffany Hanlon-Francie. In these episodes, Steffi and I have a conversation about the different aspects of what we refer to as Mindset Matters, because we believe that for those who are awake, we are living in and through the most impactful time in history. Your view of the world is the filter for how you will experience the evolution and changing dynamics of it. Our intention is to provide you with ideas, nutritious food for thought, and some tools that you can use to help you in being your greatest self and living your best life. Listen in, enjoy. Welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Mindset Matters. Steffany, here we are.
Hey, hon.
Another week in November has gone by, and we're well into November. Travel day, heading to Toronto, TEDx, plus another speaking gig. Busy month.
Yeah, it is actually more so than I expected. I've got three competitions, also one in Finland left and one in China left. And then the Grand Prix final in December. So there's a lot going on for all of us.
So do you think you're going to have a fight along the way?
Well, I know us, probably more than one.
So that's the topic for today. Why is it that we fight in relationships? And is that the right question? Or when we get into a fight, do we have to step back, take a breath, calm down, and say, what are we fighting for? And, we look at over the years, we've often talked about it. We're pretty, you and I mean, some people look at us like we're squabbling constantly, I think sometimes, because we are often having disagreements or not aligning, but we're working always to get in alignment. And you have a way of pissing me off often. So I don't know, what are we fighting about, or what are we fighting for? And that's what I want to kind of unpack today, because you and I get into it. We have lots of arguments, lots of discussions, lots of heated debates. You're still here, I'm still here. What the heck? What's the question? What are we fighting for? And when we look at some of over the years, what we've learned as we've grown up and matured and got into this relationship, you realize that it is the classic case of the husband that comes home and kicks the dog, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with the dog. There's always the underlying, what is it that we need to understand about ourselves, and what it is that we're actually fighting for, as opposed to what are we fighting about. And so that can take on all sorts of shapes and forms and understanding, but asking ourselves the question can actually shift the discussion or shift the argument to that it becomes a discussion and not this divisive argument. So are we, for example, with somebody, I don't know, common, I guess, is somebody might forget an anniversary, or they might miss a call. You often frustrate me and piss me off because I'll text you and you'll go, well, I didn't see the text. Then, of course, that's my new thing because I turned off notifications. But the point is it can spark some conflict. And ultimately, when you look at that and you get into a fight about it, or get into a real argument or discussion about it, heated discussion, is it really about that? Or is it more about the fact that I just need reassurance, or you just need reassurance that I'm available, that I got your back, that I am around? Like, what is it really? And looking at what's the real issue that we're stepping over, that we're fighting about, but we're not fighting for. Does that make sense?
Well, if you don't identify what it is you're fighting for, then obviously you're going to be fighting against, or, with each other about an issue. And to your point, like, it's never, ever really about the issue, because what I discovered over the years, and I think part of why I got into relationship with you, was that you're a mirror, and if you're in a good relationship, you've got somebody who can mirror back to you where, what maybe you don't like about yourself, or maybe you need to learn. But that takes a bit of a level of consciousness and self-awareness to know that, okay, if I'm fighting with someone, I'm fighting about, something that seems to matter a lot. Like, honey, like more than 10 years ago, we didn't even have text messaging. So the fact that you can get mad at me for not seeing a text is hilarious. Because although, well, just call me. I'm right across the parking lot. Like, just don't rely on technology, right? And you want to stand for it. So that's my question to you is, do you just need to know I'm available? Do you just need to know that I'm not ignoring you? Like, what is it, that sense of, of uncertainty that brings up? Because I think a lot of times in relationship, what causes fights is uncertainty and unmet expectations. And if there's unmet expectations, chances are there's unexpressed assumptions. And that's a spiral that I go down a lot when I find myself responding to you a certain way, or if I get angry or frustrated or pissed off at you, chances are it's either I haven't expressed what it is that I need, or I have some assumptions that you can A, first of all, read my mind, or B, I always come back to the default is that I never, ever, ever, ever 5 times want to hurt your feelings. And if I do, then I feel like shit all the time. That actually makes me feel worse because you have a really good way of pushing that whole guilt button in me.
Come on. I push the guilt button. Okay, settle down. I think probably I do, but obviously I do. So I think there's an underlying that, in the case of we talk about a text message or a missed call or a missed anniversary, not us, because, we're not wired that way and we don't miss anniversaries. Neither of us can necessarily answer on any given time when we got married. I can rarely answer that question. Somewhere at the end of July, I don't remember what year. End of June. So, see, there you go. It was the beginning of July.
It was a long weekend somewhere in there.
Yeah, but there's the point
But
is
we're
that
just not attached to that stuff.
we're not. So there's a whole understanding that there is an unmet expectation. But I think, let's talk about just the example of, I phoned you or I texted you and you didn't pick up or whatever the story is. There's an unmet expectation. And then often it's an unstated expectation. And that's where things get a little hairy. But the underlying, narrative around that can be, do I feel that you have my back, or do you feel that I have your back? Here I am, I reach out to you, I'm hoping that you got my back and you weren't available when I needed you. And so that can fire up some frustration and probably cause a fight. But if you're not really clear on what you're fighting for, you're entering it way differently. That has to be brought into our awareness before we get fired up. But I think the problem is it's always emotional. We get fired up, but understanding that what we're fighting for, even when things cool off and we come to some conclusion, it's best to understand what it is that we're fighting for, and often it's not the issue. I still am of the belief, though, and I'm probably wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think people yell at each other and raise each other because they're actually saying to the other person, "You're not hearing me." And when the reality of it is that if we lowered our voices and got to what it is that we're really trying to say, which is what are we fighting for, not what are we fighting about. And when we raise our voices, we're trying to emphasize, we're trying to make it clear, you can't hear what I'm saying, I'm going to yell at you. And then that's part of, I think, what drives the yelling. That's my own philosophy or my own theory, I guess, if you will.
Well, I think in some cases too, for certain people, I don't know, not for me. I'm not, it's like a stress release thing too, right? Like you get pent up or you get frustrated. I didn't know we had the expectation that I had to be available 24/7, 365. So when I don't answer a call or a text and you get fired up, it's just like, oh, I was in the bathroom. Like,
Yeah, well, let's get it cleared up right now. I expect 24/7.
well, then maybe your next wife, she'll be better.
But it isn't always just the case with our significant others, but often with close relationships can be with that way with friends. Are we often fighting? There's argument. There is I don't want to say argument. There's a strong case for three things. And one of them is we're fighting for care and we're fighting for closeness. We're fighting for respect and recognition, and we're fighting for power and control. And the fighting for power and control is often trying to control our circumstances. But at some level, that's what we're fighting for. Those are three things that we often fight for.
Well, I think we separate them out. Let's talk about each one because you kind of put them all in one. So let's talk about the first one.
Well, the first one that we talked about is fighting for care and for closeness. So, does the person that I'm hanging out with, that I am married to, or that I'm a good friend of, do they really have my back? And if we have unmet expectations, we can feel that that person doesn't have our back. We lose some degree of trust and it breaks down. And when we break down trust, then we grow distance, then we operate on top of it. And then the next thing you know, it leads into another fight, which has got nothing to do with not having their back, not having to do with closeness. It becomes and it shows up as something else to fight about, but it's not the issue.
Yeah, I think a lot of it gets grounded in, having each other's back, absolutely. Closeness and care. I mean, you think that somebody that you marry or that you're investing in a relationship, that you automatically, that should be an assumption that we always have each other's back 100%.
I don't, but I disagree. I don't know that it should. I think you used the word. Maybe I misheard you, but I don't think we should have that assumption. I think it's
No,
got to be.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, got it. Maybe I probably misheard you.
No, I'm saying that is the assumption, is that we should have each other's back. Well, I wouldn't go into a relationship with anybody. That's my values, that I wouldn't have your back. That to me is an unexpressed assumption. It's something I don't feel I need to say, over and over again. But I do find that in many situations, people will set scenarios where a decision that was made can cause a lack of trust. And then, like you say, you come home, kick the dog, has nothing to do with that. It could be a decision that you made that is over here. And we do this whole matrix of trying to figure out what it is that we're really angry about. And that's a difficult process. And if you don't have that emotional ability to emotionally regulate yourself or co-regulate in terms of our relationship, that we're fighting for clarity, or we're fighting for that connection. We ebb and flow in our relationship. I'm a big personality. You're a big personality. And I think there's times where we've had to really slow ourselves down and ask for forgiveness and ask for that, humility and understanding from each other, that, I don't want to hurt you. You don't want to hurt me. What's happening? Well, so-and-so, you made a decision and it really fucked me up or whatever. And I'm not over it yet. So what do I need to do? That's not about you, for example, right? It's about me. So when you're angry with me, if it's truly about me, that's what's hard to hear as a partner, because of course you don't want to screw up. You don't want to be made wrong. But generally when we enter a fight, my goal is, okay, where am I that? Where am I that? Where am I that? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? Where am I that? So there's a lot of self-reflection that goes on. And if I can't get to it, sometimes that's where I lash out. It's like, dude, this is not about me. This is about you. And then you'll say, no, it isn't. It's not about me. It's about you. Or then it's about Trudeau. We have to figure out what it's about.
But I think there's a place too where, over the years, as we've, developed and grown as a couple, there is a place too, is what does having your back mean? And there are going to be circumstances where you may feel like I didn't have your back, or vice versa, but that was not the intention. We had an expectation of what having our back or having each other's back means. And maybe there was a breakdown, or there was a lack of clarity, or the intention wasn't what it was, but that's how it occurred. But back to, what are we fighting about? Again, is what is the fight about? If it is a discussion about, I feel like you didn't have my back in that circumstance, and that this is the way it unfolded, that's a way different discussion than complaining that I showed up late or I didn't wear the right thing. The question becomes, what is the underlying issue that we're not talking about? And that's where things get a little bit complex, if you will, a little hairy, is if we're not really clear. Well, the issue is, I didn't feel like you had my back. But at times it takes some effort, some reflection to even get to what it is. You may not know that's what it is, and talk it through.
But with all the distractions of life, we all have things that are coming at us all the time. We don't have children at home right now. We don't have a lot of things that are pulling us away. We're not trying to get to skating lessons and swimming lessons and having to work at this and go to a full-time job. And we don't have a lot of that. And I have a lot of compassion for people that are trying to navigate relationships with a spouse that maybe doesn't even understand a conversation about, what things can build up, especially with women. If we don't have a place to express, if we're not, hanging out with other women of like mind and not gossiping, because a lot of women are known to get together and they just talk about other people. And I have a real strong stand against that. For years and years, I had a group of women that I could really trust. And then I knew that when that meeting or whatever that was over, that I was clear. I could come home and I was, more free to express what I needed to you, etc. But if we don't have that, whether we're not journaling maybe, or if we don't have a trusted best friend or an outlet for that, it can land on our partner. And I think because I find the masculine and feminine energies very, very different, that even in you, how you filter, if I'm not clear and if I'm just trying to tell you what I need, I can sound like just a rambling idiot until I can get to it. And sometimes I've had to ask you is like, can you just wait till I get to it? I'm in the moment right now. I'm fired up. This is not about you. I'm going to sound like it's about you, but it's not. I'm going to get to it. But sometimes I find with people in you used to do this early in our relationship is you would cut me off at the knees or whatever and not let me fully get to it because you want to fix it. And I think your intention or in the intention in that regard, because I'm also a fixer, I want to make things better for people, is that the intention to try to fix something is coming across as care and having each other's back. But there's a space that gets, it's like there's this energy or emotion that gets stuck behind a big wall, and sometimes that wall can just burst.
Well, this actually leads into the next one, which is fighting for respect and recognition. So, part of having each other's back or having the other person's back is also showing respect and recognizing the relationship that you have. And we often fight for respect and recognition without really knowing that that's what we're doing. So, whether that's, maybe picking up the kids from daycare or mowing the lawn or emptying the dishwasher or whatever that might be, is that these things go often unnoticed. And if they go unnoticed or not acknowledged, there is a breakdown of what would be considered respect and recognition. We need that. And I think that, even in our roles in our jobs in our businesses with other people, we need to know that we have earned, okay, if you're getting respect and recognition, hopefully it's because you've earned it. There is some value there. There is some significance that goes there. So if within our own relationship as a couple, if we can't receive that, we're going to operate on top of it at some level and go, we're just underappreciated. Nobody's noticing what I do. And, we sometimes bump up against that a little bit. Given when you live on 5 acres of land, there's always shit to do. And there's a lot of stuff that, physically I have to do or hire somebody to do it. But ultimately, there's just a lot of things that are going on that no different than what role you play. I'm more the outdoor guy doing stuff, but what role you play, we don't even see sometimes what we're doing. And if we have to get that, we do need that recognition and that respect or the feeling of respect. But ultimately, if that's what we were always, if we were really always operating on top of that, you and I'd kill each other, I think. We wouldn't be together. But we don't look, we do have that respect and recognition with each other. I think there's moments where we could up our game, but ultimately, we both look for that and we do a pretty good job. You do a better job of it with me than I do with you.
Well, I think when I learned early on that significance was one of your highest values, and whether was on top of anything else, we may not have been aware of it. So I got really used to trying to make sure that you knew how much I appreciated everything you do and your skills and your MacGyverisms and all that stuff. But one thing that made me laugh, I think it was last summer or the summer before, you were mowing the lawn. And one of the things you do when you mow the lawn is you go and you pick up dog poop. And you got a little bag and a little scoop and your gloves on, and you stop and you pick up, and we have horse dogs, right? Their poop is huge. And anyway, you came in one day or after a day of mowing the lawn or whatever, and you're like, I think there's something wrong. I don't think the dogs have been pooping. I wonder if they've been pooping somewhere else. I'm like, and I didn't catch it for a minute. And you go, I think we should, take a look at this. I mean, this is not good. And I sat back from it and I went, oh my God, honey, I just picked up poop yesterday, but I don't announce it. So you're mowing a lot, looking for the poop, and it's not there, and you're worried about the dogs instead of going, I wonder if someone else picked up the poop, like someone else, like my wife.
That never occurred to me that there's somebody else that would do that.
Wasn't that funny?
Well, again, and then there I stepped over it, right? I didn't acknowledge you. Does that mean that I don't respect and recognize you? I didn't know it was even happening. So if you're
I know. But how often does that happen in relationship where the other person is doing something and I'm not needing acknowledgement for picking up poop or, picking weeds or whatever. I do it and then I go on to my next task. But it shone a light on the fact that, oh, so if I don't announce it, then maybe I won't get credit or whatever you want to call it for picking up the dog poop. But that's not the point. The point is that if we take the time to acknowledge what the other person does, even if it's not in our values, or if you don't really, my girlfriend asked me a while back when she was struggling with her husband, and they were really bumping into this respect and, this recognition, which of course comes from significance, and they're equal partners in their businesses as well. And she asked me, she goes, yeah, but how do you know? Like, you guys don't do like birthday cards and big stuff. And I go, well, yeah, he throws me a party. I throw him a party every once in a while. She goes, but how do you know he loves you? And I look out my office window and I go, because he's mowing the lawn. That's how I know.
Mm.
And it really hit her. And she's like, I need to start looking at some of those things. Like, that's why my husband, built our backyard and cleans the swimming pool or whatever, or picks up dog poop, is because he loves me. So I've equated that to that, but I had to do that intentionally. So when I see you fix things, or I watched you do the drywall thing, because we had that little flood, last week in our house, you wouldn't believe all the people that right now have had floods and water issues. I wonder if there's something universally going on. Anyway, but I saw you do that, and then you fix the drywall, and I'm like, that is so hot. It is unbelievable to be able to watch you do that. And I hope you know how much I appreciate those skills. And I remember sending a note to a girlfriend. I sent a picture, and I was going to tell a story, but I didn't tell the whole story about one thing led to another, and the drip and the drywall. And then I just said, long story short, marry someone can fix things.
It's true. Okay, so, but it's an interesting conversation, I think, as much as we've dragged this one on, in this particular example, but ultimately it is true, is that, if we are looking for respect and recognition, it's one of those things that drive us. And you hear stories about couples fighting over the simplest things, like not taking out the garbage, or it's your turn to walk the dog, or whatever it is. Have you really stepped back and kind of had agreements, had levels of understanding, talked through what some of the expectations are, and so that in fact it doesn't land as I'm not respecting or recognizing you for the contribution you're being to the household, to the relationship, to the family, and we can just kind of go through the tick-tock of things and not understand that that's what's showing up for somebody. So we get into a fight and we don't realize that we're actually fighting for respecting recognition, but it shows up as, you didn't take out the garbage and it was your turn and you said you would and you didn't. And okay, hold on, slow down. Is it really about the garbage? So these are things that I think comes with, number one, conversation, number one, maturity, and a commitment to having a great relationship and to having those types of conversations, which can be probably a little deep and a little uncomfortable for some.
Yeah, I think in two, it's do you have the expectation that that person's going to change? And I realized early on that, I married you, and, we have evolved and changed. And I'm super grateful that I'm not the same person you married. I was pretty self-centered at the time, and, in survival a lot, just because I was self-employed and didn't know what that meant. I mean, growing in the 80s and 90s, like no women were working in ice hockey or in men's business or whatever. So I was very uncertain. And you really helped me learn about that and what that means. When at the same time, on the other side, is how much you changed and grown. But one of the things that makes me laugh is early on when we were living in Edmonton, I remember thinking that you had to do a certain thing and to show that you love it. And one of those things was to put your laundry in the laundry basket. Do you remember this story?
No, I have no idea where you're
Okay,
going
so
with
we
this.
had this bedroom was upstairs, and our laundry room, of course, there was a laundry chute, but I didn't know that until about 5 years after we moved in. But I would haul the laundry down all the way down, but before I had to do that, I had to put all your laundry in the basket because it was circled all the way around the basket, or it was over there. So I said, okay, can we just do this? Have one agreement. Can you just put your socks and underwear in the basket? It'd be super easy. And then a week later, the socks are still not in the laundry basket. So you know what I did? I moved the laundry basket. I took it out of the closet and put it where you put your socks and underwear.
There you go.
It just got closer. So I took responsibility. I didn't expect you to acquiesce to my demands of your socks and underwear being in a certain place. But I moved the laundry basket. My mom howled when I told her that. She goes, "Oh my gosh, that's such a Joyce trick." Because you don't want to make your lover wrong. You don't want to make your family wrong. But there's some things that I could do to make myself laugh, or to, shift the situation so I wasn't so angry about having to do all that stuff that I didn't think I should, right?
Okay. We're moving out, putting all our dirty laundry on the table today. Okay. So the final one was fighting for power and control. And so, whatever that might show up as, we have to kind of explore, if you will, the dynamics, that come back. Even a lot of this stuff often goes back to our childhood or past relationships, where somebody might have felt overly controlled and or ignored. So, you can show up for me often as controlling. And I know it's a lot of what your control is around curiosity. So when I hear you asking me questions, it feels like, okay, you're just looking for some kind of control over what's going on. And I'm not one for sharing details. I find it all quite boring. So I'm more like high level. I'm just doing this. You don't need the details. Because for me, that shows up as control. And then at some level, you're going to come out and make me wrong for it. So I'd rather just not share what I'm doing. I just do shit. So, so the fighting for power and control part of it is, something that I think people do that because they need control. They need to feel like there's some control in their life. And so again, you go back to leaving socks and shoes around to whatever the cat litter is. It seems, these are really trivial things that may represent some form of autonomy or resistance to being controlled.
Yeah.
You need to do the litter. You need to do the garbage, whatever that is. Quit controlling me. I'll do what I want to do when I want to do it. And what is it really that we're actually kind of pushing up against, which is an old story that we have, is we're not going to be controlled. We want our autonomy. Don't tell me what to do. And we've seen this many times over the years with others. I think there's probably we all have some point in our life where we're going, don't tell me what to do. That's that fighting for independence and autonomy, not being controlled. And how many times have we heard that statement? I think we hear that from kids, right?
Yeah, most of the time. And I think what's funny about that, don't tell me what to do, is that I'm so coachable. I just assume every time you tell me what to do, it's because it's going to make us better.
That's true. It's true, because it is. That's always my intention. I'm not trying to get out of work. Okay, so I think there's probably some real value in kind of finishing this conversation and this kind of segment with shifting our question from what to why. So in other words, what are we fighting about to what am I actually fighting for? And so when we can start to understand maybe the dynamics of that, the psychology behind what we're fighting for, it will take some charge off and maybe shift the conversation, or it can shift the conversation. So any other profound insights that you want?
Well, just to dovetail off the what are we fighting for, and I think what I've seen over the years with couples that we worked for is that if there is a big disagreement and one of them is fighting for an elevated conversation or more intimacy or something that they believe is going to move the family to a higher place, and the other one doesn't want to go there and is holding back, there's a push-pull that happens in relationship. And if we can just get down to, okay, so what I'm fighting for is an elevated conversation. I'm fighting for intimacy. I want to have more connection with you. This is, and it doesn't come across that way because we're fighting or whatever. So how do we get underneath that and make sure that if one of us is fighting, or one of you in a relationship is fighting for something that will elevate the relationship, say that out loud, because it may be what you need. The dark side and the downside of that is rejection, right? And I think what drives significance as much as wanting to be seen and heard is the fear of rejection. And, us 35 or whatever years in, you can't get rid of me that easy. And, I've been hanging out this long. It doesn't matter what you do, you can't get rid of me. I have my 3 A's and that's pretty much it. But in your case, I always hope, and I think for most men is that I've worked with, is that to be seen, and to be really heard and held as the sacred masculine in a relationship, and a shared responsibility for the outcomes and the responsibility of the family. I try not to do your job, but I don't mow the lawn and I rarely pick up dog poop, but ultimately I do share the financial load. So there are different conversations that we have possibly than maybe other families that maybe are sharing a different type of load. Like I'll look after the kids. And if my girlfriend, I had one girlfriend, I love the saying, she would say, honey, you go make the living and I'll make the living worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. It's a good one. I think there's a fundamental too that we've gotten pretty great at is, there's not a consistent, this is what we're always fighting about this thing, right? There's always a fight over this thing. I can't think of anything that comes to mind anyways, which to me would be a signal that there's an underlying issue, that again has to be addressed, and we have to, kind of unpack a little and get underneath what the actual issue is. Reoccurring fight about, I'm always having to remind you to take out the garbage. Okay, well, that could be true and probably is, but what's it really all about? So put in the correction. Well, I always got to clean the cat litter. Okay, well, then if you don't like it and neither of us like it, and you have that expectation of me, then don't be surprised if I go out and spend $300 on a self-cleaning
Exactly.
box, right? So that's
It's
really
about solutions, babe.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Steffany, thanks.
Yeah, that was fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. If you found value in the podcast, please take the time to rate and review and share with others. Share with your friends. As it is my goal to always improve and to provide the highest value for you, the listener. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions you'd like answered, please email me at ceo@reincanada.com. That's ceo@reincanada.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, Patrick out.